Welcome into Bucs Insider, coming to you from the Bucs studio, presented by Ticketmaster. Casey Phillips here with Scott Smith and Bri Dix, and we have a lot of fun things to talk about this week. We had a Ring of Honor press conference, still got off-season workouts, and we had some assistant coach availability on the offensive side compared to defense last week, and we have new rules. I mean, it's like it's mid-season here with all the news we got going on. So first, of course, we want to start with the Simeon Rice Ring of Honor news. That it was great. The Freudian slip there almost happened.
Well, we can talk about that too.
The Hall of Fame part for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so tell me a little bit, first of all, for you guys. I know for me, one of the things that stood out was just how emotional he was, which you love to see that, just seeing how much it means. And for him, he really talked about the fact that he was so emotional because of the connection to his family and what he felt like this meant to the family name, that his parents have passed away. And for him, you could tell this was something that he wanted for them and to make the Rice family name mean something and for them to be proud of it and for them passing away, for him to get this afterward. And there he is, his son. And it's just so cool to see, what this meant to him, separate even from the football side. And Bri, I know you said that also kind of impacted you as well.
I loved, there were a couple of statements that he made, but some that stood out to me was he said, football was a game for me that I wanted to honor my mother and father, who he said have both passed away. I wanted to make our name mean something, and I think I got that accomplished. I represent the guys that played that will never get their names called, and I represent so much more than just myself. I feel like I'm just a vessel, and I am a vessel for those that I've impacted throughout my whole life. And I thought that was really powerful, and not only just a person that when they stepped on the field wanted the personal accolades and the achievements, but also just for him there was a much greater purpose, and it was always to make his parents proud. And he said that one of his dad's wishes for him was for him to be in the Ring of Honor. So to have that full circle moment and to be able to have that, I think was really powerful and cool for everybody to see.
And as much as it was about, the idea of a lot of this emotional kind of off the field stuff, it also was about football and his accomplishments and what he did on the field and what he meant to a defense that was very stacked, very loaded, was the identity of that team, and he was such a crucial part of it.
Yeah, I think everybody knows the story by now, but Brian Glazer certainly laid it out well when he introduced Simeon. This was the beginnings of a great defense, and in 1999, for instance, the Buccaneers went to the NFC Championship game, almost to the Super Bowl, in large part because the defense had come together and was so good, and Warren Sapp that year was NFC Defensive Player of the Year. So on that defense, you had 4 future Hall of Famers so far: Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, John Lynch, Ronnie Barber, and some other nice pieces like Brian Kelly and Shelton Quarles. And they were doing great. But Monty Kiffin in particular thought, to get this defense over the top into one of the greatest the NFL's ever seen, we need somebody on the edge to supply consistent pressure and to be that inside-outside duo with Warren Sapp. And he convinced Simeon Rice that he was that piece. And by the time Simeon decided to come here, he felt the same way. And he says he was on the phone with Rich McKay, our general manager at the time. He was in Chicago, but he was calling him and saying, we can get this done, and if I come down there, we're going to win a Super Bowl either this year or next year, which they did.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking about a guy, and we've thrown out the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
We all have believed that he at least deserves greater consideration for Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
He's been eligible since 2013. He has been the semifinalist a lot of times, but never a finalist. And this is a guy that from 1998 through 2005, so an 8-year period. That's a long period in the NFL. That's more than twice as long as the average career.
Right. Yeah.
In that time period, he had 101.5 sacks, which led the NFL. And you compare him directly to his contemporaries at the time, Michael Strahan, Jason Taylor, both in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
He had more than they did. And every player since the sack became an official statistic in 1982 that has 100 sacks over an 8-year period and is eligible for the Hall of Fame is already in. And he had another one I like is he had 8 double-digit sack seasons. Only 6 players had more, and they're all in the Hall of Fame. So he's got a Hall of Fame resume, and that's obviously the next thing we would focus on. But right now we're focusing on Ring of Honor, 16th member, very, very deserving.
Very deserving, yeah. And, like you talked about, he was kind of that final piece of what they needed on that defense to win a Super Bowl, but also he was kind of the final piece from like a personality standpoint as well. And he talked about that of like, he was like, we had some personalities on that defense. I don't know if Bucs fans are aware. There were a few personalities there. And I loved hearing the way he talked about it. I think they were all probably a little wondering, like, we all know we got some big personalities.
Yes.
How's this going to go? And he really talked about the fact that he felt like they all gelled really well together. They challenged each other, but in a good way. And so we wanted to hear this quote where he discussed the dynamics of playing alongside a lot of those other great players with some big personalities.
I listened to them talk about what it takes to win here and how this team was already built and the things that I could bring here and do here with my energy and my excellence and how I played the game. When I got here, I felt like it was okay to be myself. Tampa made it a place that I could be myself. And I felt like the men that I played with, they allowed me to be the best version of myself, you know. And they were just as rowdy as me, just as complex as me, just as loud as I could be. And we were all aligned together to crystallize our career and be the best versions of ourselves. And we were young, we were aspiring, we were dangerous, we was unstoppable, all of our mindset.
Yeah, so just a great press conference. I mean, of course, Simeon, always a great quote, always entertaining, and he said so many amazing things during the course of that presser. If you haven't seen it, make sure you check it out on the Buccaneers website and social
I don't
media.
think it was an immediate perfect fit with him and Warren Sapp. Sounds like that one took a while.
That took a little bit for the personalities
as he
to
put
mesh.
it, in the end, it was mutual respect,
Yes.
which was how it should be because they were both Hall of Fame level players.
Yep, I completely agree. So then also this week we got to hear from several of the offensive coaches and get to hear how that's progressing this offseason. And first I know offensive coordinator Josh Broussard spoke to the media, and then also I shot a slice with him, which isn't out yet, but I wanted to highlight a couple things that were mentioned both between the presser and then our time in Slice. What stood out to me is we talked, especially in Slice, about the idea of the run game, right? And why, kind of what even Josh Broussard thought about why they brought him in here. And he's like, yeah, I mean, it's continuity is like so much of what I know that I'm going to be able to bring to this. So we talked about the idea of, okay, but like in this league, you cannot do the same thing over and over and expect it to continue to work, that people watch your film, they learn about you. And he was like, so I'm trying to make sure that we're still putting guys in positions to succeed, which is what worked so well last year, of using the guys to their strength. But he was like, now we got to just disguise it a little more, whether it's some motions, whether it's like, he's like, we're going to have to figure out the ways to do what we did last year to a degree, but in a way that maybe we have to disguise a little bit more because people will have learned from us a bit last year of continuity, but disguised is the idea. So that was one of the things that I thought was really interesting. And just him also working on talking with Coach Bowles and how he's been preparing to be a play caller and how he's been working. He already was thinking about that a lot prior to even getting this job of what would I call here, what would I do, but then also now some of these call it plays during practice. And we know that we've heard how Coach Bowles has done that for Liam Cohen, did it for Dave Canales, now for him of really working in practice to get him prepared for that play calling, which is going to be interesting. Yeah. And then I know also we got to hear a little bit about the idea of Cade Otton and his development, a guy who ended up being so important to us last year. And now there's just so many offensive weapons that it'll be interesting to see how he's used this year.
Well, and I love Justin Peele said that he looks the best that he's seen him look, but also just he has the most confidence right now. He's playing fast. And I think kind of what helped build that confidence for Cade this last year was that sensational 3-week stretch that he had when Mike Evans, Chris Godwin were out. And you really got to see his route running precision. And it's not necessarily that he didn't have that capability. You just didn't see him utilized in that way. So when Chris Godwin wasn't there, you had Cade Otton running a lot of those option routes, the corner routes, and the things that Chris Godwin traditionally did, kind of became Baker Mayfield's go-to target on third down. But then also he was running the seam routes that you traditionally have Mike Evans running. So I think, but not only that, he's one of the few tight ends in the NFL that are multifaceted and well-rounded and can play all three downs and don't really provide that tell for the defense of pass catching or blocking. So I'm excited to see what he's able to do in year 4. And obviously Justin Peele said, like, you obviously hope and pray that nothing happens with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans with injury, but you're in a good place knowing that you have that security blanket in Cade for Baker Mayfield.
For sure. And I always love how Cade and the tight ends call themselves the rusty old truck, that we're not necessarily the flashiest group, but we're there and we get the job done when you need it. And I've always really enjoyed that take on them. And then Scott, what stood out to you listening to some of the offensive coaches?
Well, something that a couple of them said, both Josh Grizzard and Thad Lewis, and pretty emphatically, was they really want Baker Mayfield to take fewer hits.
Yeah.
And
I think all Bucs fans would really sleep a little easier if that was the case.
And that's on Baker. I mean, the sacks are sacks, and yes, quarterbacks sometimes are the reason they get sacked, but sacks are going to happen, and you're going to take hits that way. But it's the hits that you can avoid by either sliding down or throwing the ball away. And I guess, somebody brought up the San Francisco play with Nick Bosa, and Thad kind of laughed and said, that was one of the gotta-have-it moments.
Yeah.
Because it was 4th and 7.
Yeah, so that's a little different.
There was less than 2 minutes left in the game. We were losing by 3. If he had not made that play, the game would essentially have been over. And so he had to do whatever it takes there. I think back to the Minnesota game, his very first start with the Buccaneers in 2023. Y'all remember that? When he scrambled and he had to get your weight up on the guy?
Yeah.
That was a first that was a first down, and he got 5 yards. But if he hadn't stiff-armed his way through Byron Murphy, he probably would have lost a yard. It was just a read zone where he kept it. You look at that and you go, was that a gotta-have-it moment? I mean, it was first down, and he didn't get the first down. But that was a play that helped on a drive that ended up being the game-winning field goal drive. So it's probably a little hard. There's probably you might be standing on the sideline as a coach going, that was not a gotta-have-it moment. And Baker Mayfield's like, I gotta have it.
I think Baker views every moment as a gotta-have-it, which is what we love about him, but also scares us about him.
I'm not sure. Nobody wants to coach his confidence and aggressiveness and competitiveness out of him. Baker Mayfield would not be as good as he is if he wasn't ultra competitive with the chip on his shoulder. Nobody wants to coach that out of him. But they would like for him to sometimes slide instead of feeling like he's got to run over the guy.
That's where I wish that the microphones and the helmets were still active, so they could just be like, slide, like just like in the moment, like in the middle of the play, be like, this is it. This is what I was talking about.
Well, he said they do have those conversations at practice. He's like, even at practice, this was Thad. He was saying, I tell him, even at practice, that was an opportunity to get down. He was like, and Baker comes back and says, oh, you didn't think I could truck him? And he's like, yeah, I think you can truck him, but that's what I'm saying. Don't.
You're not an offensive lineman.
I love it. I love that he's still, even at practice, when there's like no real tackling happening, he's still like, I'd have had him.
And Thad said it was a little bit of a joking way that he said it, but still you see that in Baker, and you're never going to coach all that out of him, and you don't want to.
All right, and then finally, some new rules to be discussed. I know back in March we talked about the owners' meetings then. There were some rules changed, proposed, and some tabled, so now we had the next go-around of looking at some of these different rules. One of them that had been tabled last time was the proposed ban on the tush push, and so that's one of the ones now up for debate because it was sort of tabled back then. So what are your thoughts here on this tush push ban potential?
Yeah, we've got news coming in like as we're starting the show. We're going to talk about 3 things, and there's some good news. This one, I don't know if we have it here in any of the tweets, but apparently they just started talking about having the meeting about that this morning, and Jeffrey Lurie, the Eagles owner, came into the meeting with Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce, I was getting Jason Kelce.
Yes.
And the retired center. I don't know what they didn't yet have the result. But they were gonna, I guess, stump for not banning it, and I think it's close. I do think that this ban is going to pass. It basically is just banning pushing your teammates, your ball carriers at any point, which used to be the rule. So I get it. I don't know. I'm torn on this one because it does feel like most of the rules that get changed that involve like how you contact other players.
Like safety.
It's always based on safety, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is based more on people can't stop it, and we don't like that. And I mean,
and if Jason Kelce is okay with it, he probably was the most likely to get hurt on the play, then it makes you think, oh well, he's advocating for it, even
maybe
though he
the
was,
center that succeeded him isn't. So
maybe he's like, dang, I don't know how you did this.
I don't know. I mean, you want your coaches to be creative, right? And if they can create a play that no part of it is against the rules, and then you ban it because it works too well, I can see why a lot of people don't like that.
Yeah, I understand that.
I'm kind of torn.
And then now also we have a playoff reseeding proposal. Tell us what this is,
Well, we
Scott.
just found out. Okay, I'll tell you what it is. It's most recently, Detroit is the one making the proposal, and it's just basically winning a division does automatically get you in the playoffs, but it doesn't affect the seeding. So the seeding is just based on records. And so last year that would have made Minnesota, I guess, the number 2 seed, and instead of the number 5 seed, and they had to go on the road, and probably maybe the Buccaneers would have had to go on the road.
Right. Yeah.
So I just always think that this comes up every few years. I always think it's reactionary. That you're solving a problem that doesn't exist, in my opinion.
That it might exist one year where you're like, that seems a little unfair this particular year, but then all these other years where it seemed like it did work out pretty well.
And I'm old school on this issue, thinking that winning a division should get the advantage of a home game.
It's what makes divisions matter so much. It's like how you help build those rivalries and those games. Like it's a big. It's
that's
how
what
you
you're
get,
pushing for. Yeah,
those games.
It's going to matter a lot. It's going to not feel like it matters as much.
Yeah.
But we just found out before we started here that they have tabled that. So they're not going. They realized there wasn't enough support to pass it, so they tabled it. The tweet from a couple of guys, I think you see Ian Rappaport there, indicate that when, I'm not going to say if because we all know it's going to happen, when at some point in the not too distant future we go to an 18-game schedule, that they might bring it up again. I'm not sure why that would change everything.
Yeah, why that would be connected, but you never know. All right, go ahead.
No,
anything else? And then finally, the Olympic flag football resolution. This one is very exciting because we know that obviously flag football is going to be a sport in the LA Olympics 2028. Can NFL players try out? That was the question, because of course there's safety concerns. There's also the fact that it seems like it will, timing-wise, kind of maybe take away with training camp and all of that stuff. So there are definite risks, but the owners have approved a resolution that will allow the players to participate. I think that's, personally, I think it's a great move. It's so good for the game internationally, which clearly has been a priority for the league for a long time. Sure. And it's just fun. Like, I want to watch them try out, but it's not a guarantee they're going to be the whole team either.
Or even make it at all.
Yeah.
So it passed 32-0. So clearly the owners all agree. And I think we all know, and for good reason, it's not a bad thing, but it's because they are trying to grow the international market.
Yeah.
And also, it's at the moment just a resolution that says, okay, now we have to figure this all out. But the fact that an NFLPA rep and an Olympics rep both were there and made very positive quotes about it, okay, they're going to work it out. So it's not done yet, but yes, NFL players will be allowed to try out. Now, how's that going to look? These teams are going to be 10-person teams.
Yep.
So that's not a lot of spots.
It's not. And might mean that somebody has to do more than one thing, or no? How do we do that?
Almost I looked at they announced the current USA team rosters. There's, I think, 12 people on it. Virtually every player is listed as 2 positions, so it'll be like wide receiver / DB.
Right.
Traditionally in flag football that, all of us weekend warriors played or have played, you do a lot of playing on both sides because you might need to play 7-on-7 and you only have 9 guys. So,
right.
Most players who play people who play flag football play on both sides. Now, as sports get more and more specialized and higher level, then usually there tends to be specialization. And if you have a 10-man roster, you could have 5 guys that are always on offense and 5 that are always on defense. But you're probably going to need more depth than that. So if you're a wide receiver / DB, you're probably going to have to play some DB too. So when we're thinking about NFL players who would be good in this, versatility is big. And so obviously everybody, I think, rightfully is saying Travis Hunter.
Travis Hunter, that's very encouraging. Right? There we go. Yeah, that's going to be, as far as Bucs players, I'm very intrigued to think about this. Of course, it's not for 3 years.
Yeah.
So, of course, I'm sure a lot of people are like, Mike Evans. And I feel like Mike would love it.
He said so.
He has said, he's like, yes, I am down for this idea. But it's 3 years from now. And so that's an interesting thought of, where's Mike Evans and his health and his willingness to play then. For me, it's Bucky Irving is one of the cool ones of thinking about running back because I saw somebody was like, oh, Derrick Henry. And I'm like, well, yes, but Derrick Henry trucks people.
Yes.
That's
you don't do that
not what flag football is. And I think about watching the way of all the video we showed of Bucky being so elusive and making people miss and his cutting and all of that, of watching these people just trying for his shirt, trying for anything and the way he's able to elude, that I'm like, that to me feels like a pretty incredible flag football type of player on the Buccaneers.
I'll go a little deeper, and he at first has to prove he's an NFL player, but our rookie Tez Johnson?
Yes.
Because NFL, okay, why was he a 7th round pick despite incredible production and, a lot of, and speed and quickness?
Yep.
Because of the size. Not as important in flag football because the rules of flag football at most levels are trying to minimize contact as much as possible. It's the whole kind of idea. Instead of tackling, you pull a flag.
Right.
So he is a specialist at getting open, right? That's what's a scouting report on him. Despite his size, he just has an innate knack for getting open. That's what you need for a pass catcher in flag football. It doesn't really matter his size if he's 5 yards open. And then also, I think you pointed out, that he does have some quarterbacking background, right?
Yes.
So sometimes people get tricky, and you can you know,
pitch
maybe
here,
a pitch
little-
to him, you think he's going to run, and all of a sudden he throws the ball. So just I thought Antoine Winfield, if you wanted
Yeah.
a defensive specialist, he does have good hands if they
Yep.
need to play on offense, but I think he's kind of a heady guy who would, you know, isn't he kind of the aware guy?
Yeah.
I know the best defensive players, when I play flag football that I play with, I know it's not the same level. I'm just saying the ones who were really, really good
Right.
were the ones who really just kind of had awareness for what was going on. That's why I thought Antoine Winfield might be a good choice.
I think those are great choices for sure. All right, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Bucs Insider. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.